Okay, what's going on over there?
Okay, lady. Me, my dad, and my brother, we're working on a truck in our backyard, and we have a big lot outside, right? Correct?
Okay.
We were working, and we just see in a corner of our eye something fall down from the sky, and it was with light. And when it hit down, it was like a big impact, and we felt it. We felt like an energy, and then we hear like a lot of footsteps near us, and then we have a big equipment, and we see, and there's like an 8-foot person beside it, and another one's inside, and it has big eyes and it's looking at us, and it's still there.
Okay, where is this on your property?
In my backyard. I swear to God, this is not a joke. This is actually, we're terrified of it.
So there's 2 people or 2 subjects that are in your backyard?
Correct, and they're very large. They're like 8 foot, 9 feet, 10 foot. I don't know. They look like aliens to us. Big eyes. They have big eyes, like I can't explain it. And big mouth. They're shiny eyes, and they're not human. They're 100% they're not human. And they're not human. And they're not human. And they're not human. Human, they're 100% they're not human. Human, they're 100% they're not human. 9 feet, 10 foot, I don't know, and they're not human. And they're not human.
Hey, this might sound like a really dumb question, but did you guys see anything fall out of the sky? Yeah. We got a call, and one of my partners actually said that they saw it too. So, you happen to see any, like, I'm not BSing you. If you see any
footage?
No, like if you see any, like, little, well, not little in this case. They're claiming 8 to 9 foot tall green beings that were in their backyard. Sounds crazy, but you never know. Your neighbors, your fine neighbors over here. But again, I would normally discount it as probably not real.
Neighbors right here?
Yes. I would normally discount it as nothing. However, seeing as one of my partners said they saw it too, only reason I'm actually investigating it further. So if you guys see anything, especially in your backyard, please call 911. We'll come over, okay? And we're hoping that it's maybe just some kids pranking or doing something stupid. They said they saw something fall from the sky. They checked their backyard and they saw something with like 8 to 9 feet, no clothes, green-colored men, not human, with like the eyes were glowing, and they did not. It was not a human being. So, yeah. Sounds crazy, but you never know.
The world is a confusing place, filled with all manner of shimmering distractions that take our conscious mind and our immortal souls and subvert them into the most basal of human emotions. Can any one of us, who considers ourselves a spiritual being, truly look around the carnival at the barkers, performers, and the caged animals and believe, even momentarily, that any of this is as it should be? My name is Alan Bishop, the alchemist of the Black Forest of Indiana, distiller, historian, occasional tinker, reenactor, and your host of If You Have Ghosts, You Have Everything. Have you ever noticed the world isn't quite what it presents itself to be? That something is just a little off kilter, just a little out of focus. Perhaps that movement you caught out of the corner of your eye was more than a shadow, that weight on your shoulder more than fatigue. I have lived my whole life like this, aware, awake, and waiting for the next experience, positive or negative, always apprehensive, always analyzing. I believe that spiritual warfare is real. I believe from societal observation that others are becoming acutely aware. I believe that many are being influenced by forces unknown in a negative and spiritually deprived way. I see soft disclosure in every corner of pop culture. Join us as we pull back the curtain, as the veil thins and reach with us into the ether to reclaim the truth on If You Have Ghosts, You Have Everything. All right, so we're back with If You Have Ghosts, You Have Everything, Season 3, and we have one of my favorite people in the distilled spirits industry, Macaulay Minton, the Bourbon Swami. He is by far one of the coolest, most laid-back, most intelligent people in this industry, and one of the very few who will actually discuss his spirituality as part of his larger career and his larger life in general. You don't find that very often in this industry. And that's one of the things I wanted to do is sort of like run some people out from underneath the rocks that were in the industry, Macaulay, right? Like find some people that were really into this stuff that I knew were into it, but wouldn't talk about it. You've always been willing to talk about it, and that's very hard to find. I have another interview coming up in a few weeks with Jerry Dalton, which is going to be super cool to get his take on spirituality in distilling and just in everyday life, etc. But for those of you who are not familiar with Macaulay, so Macaulay is you're kind of a jack of all trades. You wear a lot of hats or have worn a lot of hats at Wilderness Trail. I don't even know how to describe exactly what your position has been. You know, single barrel curator, sort of grand host of all cool chillax things at the distillery. So.
Yeah, I give it the formal title of Barrel Guru, and that just seems to work with anyone from CEOs to the bottom level. It kind of encompasses everything at that point.
Very cool. Yeah, man. Yeah, so you and I got to know each other, what, I don't know, maybe, was it like right before all the stuff went south in the world a few years ago, right before COVID, somewhere in there?
Yeah, me and Amzie actually came up and we went out to the warehouse, drilled some barrels, just kind of got a good time to connect and see what everything was about, smell each other out, as you could say.
Yeah, absolutely. Had a great time doing it as well. So, you know, I have to be careful with the people that Amzie brings around sometimes, because sometimes their alcohol tolerance is higher than my own, including Amzie. So, you know, it was cool to have somebody that was actually level-headed to hang out with alongside Jolie that day too, which is always awesome. So, but we've been, you know, pretty good friends since then, and we do a little talking back and forth, and very big admirer of the work that you've done at Wilderness Trail. Also just an admirer of you as a person and the way that you handle yourself in the industry. So all of that being said, have I missed anything in the background there that you want to touch on?
I guess I can kind of just dive into what got me into the industry and kind of the evolution of my career and myself over the last several years.
Beautiful.
So when I was in college, there was no getting around it. I wanted to be a lawyer. I worked on campaigns. Once upon a time, I worked in the United States Senate as well too. And I was sitting at home and studying for the LSAT, and I hit the wall. I was smoking a little weed. I threw all those books off the table, and I was like, fuck this. I was like, I'm going to brew beer and I'm going to teach yoga. And I went down that path, and I have never looked back. North Star goal at the time was to be a master brewer, and just kind of met some people along the way and kind of steered that a little bit off track, and then got into the distillation game. So I was at UK at the distillations, spirits and winemaking program, and I actually met Dr. Heist at Wilderness Trail on a field trip, and I was like, man, if I can figure out how to work in the microbiology lab, working with yeast and doing quality control, I was like, I'll be able to walk in anywhere and get a job. Well, turned out I was just walking in over the next room. So they ended up hiring me to be a distillery operator on our 18-inch cook system, running the still, doing cooking. I mean, this is when we were small. So I was going in the morning, getting still fired up, run out to the rick house, put a couple barrels on. I got the temperature up, come in, do the cook, get everything transferred, go back to barrels, and then it was just a small show at that point. But you know that lifestyle as well too.
Yeah, just running at it for sure. And what a great opportunity though to get to work with Dr. Heist as well. And for those who are listeners who aren't in the bourbon industry or the spirits industry in general, Pat Heist is probably the most brilliant person when it comes to yeast and, well, really any sort of microscopic life form that he can manipulate in some way, shape, or form to make alcohol or some alcohol type derivative in the entirety of the industry.
Yeah, so that was kind of the piece on what got me into the whiskey game. And at the second fold of that was getting into yoga as well too. I always turned to yoga when in life when I was having hard times, being stressed. In high school, I found the path of yoga, kind of walked away from it a little bit, and then got back into it in college. And now I teach workshops, meditation. I'm really into singing bowls, doing 432 megahertz, like sound healing programs with the chakra system as well too. And that's kind of where the name, the Bourbon Swami, comes from. So it's kind of a two worlds colliding there. And it's, I love this conversation about spirits and spirituality because when you say that in a room, everyone's face just kind of goes blank. They're like, what? Like, they're like, they don't understand it because we have had these conceptions of alcohol bad from prohibition, you know, all that kind of work just set the negative tone for it. And of course, there are some negative side effects of alcohol as well, too. I'm not saying that you're going to get enlightened after you drink a fifth whiskey or anything like that. You might think you are at the moment, but that's definitely not the case of it. So there's good and evil to it. I mean, in all reality, there's a shadow side as well, too. And it's very, very much hard to sometimes balance that. I mean, you work in the industry, so you probably consume a little bit more than, and me, more than the doctor would recommend on it. But at the end of the day, we have to do it. I mean, it's not like we're just sitting around shooting the shit, sipping on stuff. I mean, we're spot checking distillate, checking barrels. I mean, it just comes with the territory on it. And it does wear you down physically, spiritually, and emotionally sometimes as well, too. And I know I've had to take breaks away from it. And that is kind of a segueing into another topic that I want to get into is we'll go back to that. But I went and did ayahuasca with the Shipibo shamans in the Amazon jungle a couple of years ago. I live a life that everyone says is a dream career. They're just like, I want to do that. Well, sometimes the grass isn't as green on the other side. And when you're living and breathing it every single day, I mean, it's taxing. I mean, I love talking to people and I'm sociable, but you have to be on all the time. And it's just really taxing at times too. And people don't think of that or really realize that until you're in there. And I needed a master reset button and didn't know what to do. And I dabbled in psychedelics through college and just in general, but more of a party situation, like, you know, going to a Grateful Dead show or something like that. Not going to the Amazon jungle and staying in huts in the middle of nowhere. I mean,
yeah, more
that was just
more enlightenment by proxy, right?
Yes. Yeah, didn't know what I signed myself up for that, but we can dive more into that in a minute. But I was really wanting to go ahead.
I was going to touch on two things there real quick, Macaulay. So the first thing is it is funny. It's weird that there's so few people who are willing to have the spirituality and distillation conversation, right? Especially even with you know, the more mainstream, you know, there's a lot of Christians, there's a lot of Christian evangelicals even that are in the industry, right? And there's only just a handful of those that I can have any kind of very interesting spiritual conversation within the industry. Kevin Rose is one of them, right? And he has contextualization very similar to what we do for, you know, yeah, there's a drag on you, there's a spiritual drag, etc. But it is weird to watch a room. When you mention it in the room, you can tell, man. You can look, if there's 90 people in that room, you've just flipped the off switch on about 85 of them where they're like, they don't know what to do with that conversation whatsoever. Unless, you know, like the way that I get away with it is naming things after people that I can say are ghosts. And then if there's a ghost story, then they're in for the ride. They're okay with that. But like you said, this is one of the reasons I started the show, man. is because there is a, there is a little bit of a spiritual drag that comes along with being in the industry, and the grass isn't always greener for sure. I mean, certainly, I haven't reset and gone to the Amazon yet, but maybe it could happen. But I've certainly had to pull back on my recreational drinking because you have to, because people have that misconception of us as distillers or working in the industry that we are sitting around drinking all day, and it's not the case. But it taxes you hard, and you pay for it. And you're not gonna, like you said, you're not gonna be enlightened by drinking a fifth of whiskey, but you might be enlightened to some shit about yourself the next morning that you didn't know. So
Yeah, so I mean, whiskey's also brought together some very interesting spiritual characters in my life as well too. So I am a Zen practitioner, and I also study Shaolin and Tai Chi as well too. And everything's an exchange of energies or some form. I mean, so when you're taking lessons from these people, usually people are simple and fine, just wanting a little cash or something like that. Exchange for an exchange, if you will. So my Zen master, I actually pay him in whiskey.
there you go, man.
And I went to an all day Zen retreat a couple of weeks ago at his house, and after everyone left, me and him sat around the kitchen table and had a few glasses of bourbon and just had some really good conversation and connected more than we would in a session, if you will. And the same thing with my Shaolin and Tai Chi master as well too. They don't want cash. They want that good
Or
whiskey
bourbon.
that I
Yeah.
can provide them, and I get their sacred knowledge in exchange for that. So it's interesting that how this can work as well too, because
Being able to ride
um,
that wave, right, where you can still have a lucid conversation. That's the trick. That's the thing.
and also, I mean, there's a preacher in town that I'm friends with as well too, and he comes on barrel picks sometimes too. I mean,
Hmm.
he got the funniest thing is he was the most intoxicated person in the room. I had a barrel pick group come in that I've never met them before, and I was like, hey, do you guys mind if I have someone sit in on it? And I was like, my preacher wants to come in and do a barrel pick with us, and they were like kind of weirded about it at first, and then it was just perfect because he got drunk. It was just next level. Like it was just great.
Some
Everyone loved it. I mean, no
sometimes you
harm was
just
done, but it
yeah.
was just like now
Sometimes you just
he's
got
invited
stuff
every time.
you got to get out of your system, right? That's the entire case, and that's at least from my perspective with that, with alcohol and distillation. Sometimes there's things that you just gotta. That's the key to open that door and get some of the let loose of some of those things that kind of bind you as a person. So
Well, and it's interesting that you say that because he actually had lost his son this year as well too. A rare disease came out of nowhere and lost
wow.
him really quick. So
Mm.
that was what was on his mind and heart. So being able to come out and connect with some strangers that he never met, have a good time and new experience, I think that might have done some powerful healing better than any shrink or any prescription
Yeah,
pills
man.
could have done for him. Honestly.
I agree, and this is one of those industries too where that is one of the more beautiful sides of it. I think is when you do get to have those experiences, and usually it's in a small group, 10, 15 people at the most, but where you have that experience where everybody's is sort of getting those things off their chest, or just being able to talk in an honest way that in a lot of other industries you'd never be able to talk in that way, right? And being able to do it with people that either you've known for a long time or people that you just met, but you can tell when those people are around and when they've had a couple drinks, and you can kind of feel that vibe in the room, and it's that sort of thing I love. That's the thing where at the end of it you just I'm gonna give you a hug before you leave. I just met you a couple hours ago, but here's my email and my phone number and all that stuff. So that is one of the really cool things about that I do love.
Yeah, it helps foster community and build connections, honestly. And I've been I've been writing this a little blurb this week because just trying to prepare us for what we were talking about. So,
Mhm.
and I got really obsessed with this concept, like the yoga of whiskey. I mean, it's a fantasizing concept that explores actually the mind body connection through the lens of whiskey. Um, it's an approach that emphasizes the importance of intention and self awareness in order to get the most out of the experience. At its core, the yoga of whiskey is about being in the present moment and fully engaged with all aspects of the whiskey. from the aroma and the flavor to the physical sensations in the body. So by bringing intention and mindfulness to the experience, one can deepen their understanding of the whiskey and themselves. So the mind-body connection is a key component of the yoga of whiskey. Like as one sips the whiskey, they can focus on the physical sensations in the body, such as the warmth in the chest, a good Kentucky hug, a little tingling in the flavors of your fingers or in the lips. And by paying attention to these sensations, you can become more in tune with your body and gain a deeper appreciation for whiskey. And showing intent and intention are also important in the yoga of whiskey. So by setting an intention for the experience, kind of what we just talked about, such as to relax or to savor the moment or to try to break through some construct that you have in your head, you can bring a sense of purpose and focus to the experience. And this can actually enhance the overall enjoyment of whiskey and help create a deeper connection between you and the spirit that you have with you. I mean, there's a reason that shamans consume alcohol, because it is a psychoactive drug, period. There's no debate on that it is. And you can break into different realms and foster new connections on different planes of reality as well too, and along with people in the room with you as well too. So getting back onto the whiskey yoga here, so and just knowing oneself is crucial. I mean, by understanding one's preferences and taste, I mean, you can choose a whiskey that is best suited for your individual palate. I mean, this can lead to a more enjoyable experience and greater appreciation for the art of whiskey making. So the yoga of whiskey kind of offers a unique and insightful approach to enjoying whiskey. But by bringing that intention, mindfulness, and self-awareness to the experience, you can deepen your understanding of one drink in your own body, leading to more meaningful life and enjoyable experience as well too.
Absolutely. That's awesome, man. That's awesome. That's exactly the kind of thing that I want to see more of and hear more of in this industry, right? That's and it's not just an industry thing, but amongst people. You know, those understandings, that intention, as you said in particular, is super important when it comes to this stuff. And that's the beauty of you know, you work for a what was a very small distillery for a long time, and that's what you get on the small scale side of things, right? That's where you have those opportunities. It's almost more fun sometimes to be in the minor leagues than the major leagues, for sure. But you know, the major leagues have their advantages too. You just got to find a way to put that intention into the major leagues sometimes. So
Yeah, so kind of going on that same conversation, I started thinking of it in how Zen actually practice relates to whiskey as well too. And so firstly, whiskey can be considered as a contemplative drink. I mean, it's complex, it's ever evolving. I mean, you let it sit in the glass for a little bit, you're going to get a little bit different quality each time. So the slow sipping of a whiskey and the appreciation of the aroma and flavor can get you in that present moment. And it's the same thing as cultivating a sense of like mindfulness. I mean, this is similar to the practice of mindfulness meditation and Zen and yoga, and which involves being focused in the present moment and being fully aware of one's thoughts, feelings, and surroundings. I mean, whiskey can be seen as a symbol of balance and harmony as well too. I mean, whiskey's often aged for many years in oak barrels, which gives it a unique flavor and complexity. And this process involves bringing in different factors of balance. So like from grain selection, wood selection, the climate, and all this has influence on that final product. So having that emphasis on balance and harmony is something we can apply to actually all aspects of life, from physical posture to mental and emotional states as well too. And it can also be seen as a form of self-care and self-compassion, honestly. I mean, taking the time to savor a glass of whiskey can be the way of acknowledging and honoring yourself, and to find joy in the simple pleasures of life. This is similar to the practices of self-care and self-compassion that Zen and yoga teach you, which encourages individuals to take care of their physical and mental well-being and to treat themselves with kind and compassion. I mean, so many times you're your own worst enemy. I mean, there's nothing holding you back except for yourself sometimes. And I mean, that can be life, personal, business pursuits, anything like that. You're always your own worst critic, always. And that's been my experience as well too. I mean, that goes into some of that shadow side as well too, and it's fear. It's like, what if? It's going against what the mind knows as safety and comfort or the status quo.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So
I'll even throw a little caveat in there too that I think gets missed in the industry too, is like when people get like a little bit of success, right? When you first get a little bit of success and a big name recognizes something that you did and they put it out there, right? And that's super cool and it's a great feeling, and you're like, you can be all in on yourself, right? But if you haven't done all the shadow work, and I'm guilty of this, this has happened to me a few times, you'll hear somebody say something. It's the thing, don't read the comments, right? Don't read the comments on anything positive that's said about you, because it becomes a whole thing, and it's all in your head, because it doesn't matter what any of them say about you or what they say about your product or what your intention was. You know what your intention was, you know what your abilities are, you know what your capabilities are, but you let that stuff get in your head, and it creates a thing that, this is prevalent in many industries, but I think it becomes super prevalent in our industry, where you sort of start to suffer from imposter syndrome. You start doubting yourself because you think that one person said something, so everybody must think it. No, that's just you in your own head having that conversation.
I agree. I mean, and authenticity is a rare factor in this day and age as well too.
Mm-hmm.
And it's rare to sit down and have an authentic conversation with someone in this day and age. It actually has substance to it. That's just not buzzwords and pop culture or anything like that. And whenever you're able to find those connections, that's a real jewel right there.
Absolutely. And those are the ones that last. They last for a long time, for sure. Yeah, I'm curious too, Macaulay. So when kind of talking to everything that you've said thus far. So we'll start. I have two questions that are related to it. But the first question that I have for you with what you've stated thus far is, when you sat down with intention to enjoy a glass of whiskey or spirits, right? And you're not sitting down just to drink. You're actually sitting down to really, get into this drink, enjoy this drink, think about what it means, etc., and how it makes you feel. Do you have any particular rituals or any particular sort of mantras that you sort of go into when you're in that state of mind?
I think connection with the breath is essential to that. I don't use any specific mantras at that time, but I think being in sync with the breath and actually taking in that as an experience and treating it, I mean, you could treat it as a ritual, actually. I mean, are we just taking shots of whiskey, or are we, am I caressing the glass, looking and admiring that color, giving it a nice little swirl so the alcohol can coat the glass so the aromatics flow up as the evaporation happens. It kind of excites the senses a little bit and kind of gets you intrigued on what's going to happen next. I mean, your mouth starts to get a little salivated at that point, and then it's time to dive into the dance and see what we can unpack. And then every sip is a new testament to what's going on. So being able to try to dive in and unpack the complexity, like the mystery behind it. That's what I was doing this afternoon. We have some 8-year-old bourbon coming out, and had a little taste of it, and I was just like, man, I need to go like sit in my office and not just be around everyone right now, because everyone's like, oh, what are you doing? What's that? I'm like, I need my solo time with this one. So, and just being able to catch the vibe, honestly. I mean, everything's has an energy to it as well too.
Yeah, that's one of those things too, when you're really analyzing those things and you really want to dive into them. That's one of the basic rules and premises of alchemy, is that you do that in a space where it's your space and there's not that interference, because it can be distracting. It can be beautiful with people, but if you need to have that moment where you're actually really trying to understand it up front, it's nice to have a space of your own. The second part of that question was somewhat similar, but so, when I tend to think of the way that you have handled in the past barrel picks at Wilderness Trail, and I was lucky enough to get to go on one of those with AMZ winning, and and some other very good friends. So it was super cool because it's obviously all friends. We all knew each other. But what I thought was the coolest part of it is obviously you had like your own place there, right? That was your place. But you were almost like a and I, that ties in the Swami thing, but you're almost like shepherding your flock to some degree, right? So is there a ritual headspace or a headspace that you go into in particular? And is that based upon the energies that you're picking up from those people as well, right? Where you sort of cater to that on some level?
So I'll say one thing first. When you drink whiskey with someone, there is a energetic exchange going on there. Consuming spirits with someone, you will pick up on their energy. So before anyone comes into the room, I always cleanse the room. I use Aqua de Florida. I use Palo Santo wood as well too. And I have a shrine in my office as well too, with some fresh growth, some crystals. And then also to keep out the bad spirits, we have iron stakes in all four corners of the room. But we'll dive into that rabbit hole in just a minute though. But it's just setting the tone and intention for the day though. Like we need to have a good experience. I mean, rule number one of barrel picking is play the Grateful Dead, first of all. And I use that as a litmus test as well too. Like someone comes in, they're like, "Oh yeah." I was like, "Oh well, you're getting the good shit out of the back now, my guy." And then it just goes into there because like if you're a music fan yourself, so like if you're able to pick up and find your people, instantly the room changes. And I love that. That's just like a little secret and a little trick there. And thinking back about the previous question about like a little mantra, like I just thought of this, like when we're at the distillery and we're having a couple shots or something like that, trying something out, like more of a fun end of the day thing. We always say L'Chaim, because to life, to the glory of life and being able to experience that moment with people in time and space. I mean, we live a privileged life and have being able to grow up in the society that we're at and be able to engage in such high quality spirits as well too. I mean, it's a privilege and it's not a right to be able to have this.
Yes, 100%, man. Very cool. Yeah, I was curious because you do a great job of setting that vibe with people when they come in, right? It's not it's not the corporate barrel pick, but it's also not like the spirits of French lick chaos magic shit that I've got going on over here, right? It's going to be a good time. It's going to be relaxed. It's going to be fun, and you're going to pull cool stuff, right? And you're going to make everybody feel like they belong there, which is awesome. So,
yeah, because when we did our barrel pick, we kind of settled. We tried through a couple mash bills, and then sat down. And I was like, man, let's blend this wheated bourbon and this high rye together. And that was a no-no technically because we don't have a label approved for that. But it still happened, and it was delicious.
It was amazing. It was amazing. Yeah, I feel you on that. I get in trouble for that too because, I go in the barrel room and have fun with people, and then I'm like, they're people you like, right? You're shepherding and you want to show them stuff. And I'm like, I always try to preface it with like, I can't really tell you that I can sell you this. You're going to have to talk to the owners, right? And then I get in trouble later. They're like, why would you even show them that? I'm like, well, I don't know, but it sold some barrels, right? Yeah, but it was for the tasting room. Well, now it's for somebody else's tasting room. So
I guess we can get into some of the more interesting stuff now. So I have a very interesting skill set and intuition, if you will. I can sense and smell and see and hear things that are not gifts that everyone else has. And it's not something that's 24/7. It's just like all of a sudden, like I hear like something's calling my name and I hear a voice or something. It's just like, hey. And I think that you have some of those qualities as well too. And being at the distillery, kind of the best way to preface it is like we're like a beam of light almost. And when something can see that light, it's like, hey, and then it tells everything else around there. So then all of a sudden, you got stuff flying off the walls, lights flickering on and off, and just everyone's just wanting to come communicate with you. It was crazy at the distillery for a little bit last year. Like, they figured it out. I was in there one day, and something was telling me to go find a cave and go meditate in a cave. And I asked around. I called like the extension office, found like some like geologist guy, and then finally I called another buddy, and he's like, "Man, this is so weird that you called me today." He's like, "We just took the lock off of Daniel Boone's hideout cavern up in the Palisades near Fort Nelson." He's like, "Do you want to go in there today?" And I was like, "Absolutely."
Yep. There's no way you're passing on that.
This is where I had a very profound experience. So we went in there, and I brought some mezcal. Is a very interesting fiery spirit. So I brought some mezcal, and we sat in there. We did a little deprivation. We had some mezcal, had some sacred herbs, set a little intention and altar, and just sitting in that experience. And if you've never sat in a cave in the dark, it is a trip. Well, just say it lightly. I mean, it is just a whole new experience. I mean, so after that happened, the cave basically came to life. Like, it's dingy and spray painted. People have been vandalizing it for years. And then after that, like, little ceremony ritual, the cave came to life. I mean, it was all the limestone quartz was like glowing silver in there. And we start walking through, and I'm looking around, and we got kind of lost and just kept, I think it was intentional though, like, you know, or it's part of the cave's needs at that point.
You kind of have to, yes.
So got a little lost in there, and then I start looking around, and I look up, and there's all these quartz crystals in the ceiling from where the limestone water had been going through there. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, I've got to get a piece of this and take it with me. And I was like, how do I get it? I was like, I don't have a hammer or chisel, any of this. And then something said, touch it. So I touched it, and it fell out in my hand. I was like, oh, awesome.
Right.
So
little gift.
Then there's this very tight squeeze. It's probably a 7-foot ledge, and you have to have somebody there to help support you and build you up. So we managed to get up that, and I was going through the cave, and I found a piece of iron ore in there. So I added that to my little satchel and kept going. And then you could see where there was a old coal fire in part of the cave where they just had like light through it at some point. And I mean, it had to have been hundreds of years, something burning there, because I looked up and I found one of the rarest earth elements called zincite at the top of it. So zincite's a really interesting crystal because it's not really found in large pieces naturally. Some of it forms off the coast of New Jersey, and then the largest deposit that was ever found was actually in Poland in a coal smelting plant. So when they tore down the big chimney where all that soot had been going through, heat and chemicals, they found where it had developed that. I actually wear a piece of that almost every day on my necklace. But anyways, I'm looking up there and I'm like freaking out. I'm like, oh my God, there's zincite right here from where that coal had been burning. And I was looking at it again. I kind of went through the same thing. I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to get these crystals out of this cave right now? And it was just like, I touched them and 4 or 5 of them fell in my hand. And I was just like, oh God. So continuing on with that, we were sitting on the porch and having a little whiskey. And then a friend was telling me, he's like, oh, there's a bunch of deer out here. And like, you can hear them walking through the woods. And we're sitting on the porch, and I hear something big. And then all of a sudden, there's this animal that just like slivers out of the woods and like slivers over the stone fence. And me and him we're not arguing, but it was like he's like, "That's a coyote," and I was like, "He's like, that's a bobcat," and I was like, "No." It stopped right underneath a fence light too, and I was like, "That's a fucking cougar right there." So this massive cougar came out, stopped, looked at us, and then kept continuing on. So that's how I found my spirit power animal right there. It's
Yep.
like almost reminds me of Chronicles of Narnia almost.
Yeah.
But it was just like, wow. Like it was just a profound experience though. And the guy that I was with, I don't know what he thought was going on because he's not on the same plane as I am, but he's from California, so he was down for the ride. If
Right.
that makes any sense.
Right. Yeah, I feel you on that, man. Because I got several of those friends that have been on some adventures like that with me too, where you kind of like you saw that, right? You felt that, right? And sometimes they see the things, sometimes they feel something, but they may not necessarily know exactly what they felt or what they saw. So, but yeah, I feel you.
But yeah, that experience. So I went from having my little light being a small flicker of a lighter almost to being a industrial torch at that point. So after that happened, that's when everything at the distillery came out of the woodwork. And it's funny because there's a few other employees there that are on the same level as me, and we understand it and get it. And then so I was in my office and I walked outside to smoke a cigarette, and I actually called and talked to you about this because it was kind of mind blowing. But so I'm sitting outside smoking a cigarette, and the rick house lights pop on, and usually there's not like a floor switch for you
Right.
can just turn one on. So the third floor and the top floor came on, and I was just like, "Oh God, this is weird." Like, so. And I've always known, this is an old 1850s farmhouse. There used to be an Indian encampment there as well too, because we find arrowheads, hatchet heads, all kinds of stuff. So I go into the distillery and I was talking to the night shift distiller, and I was like, "Hey, I want to know what's been going on in B." And like they all kind of looked at each other. They're like, "What do you mean?" And I was like, "You know what I'm talking
You
about,
know
don't
exactly
you?"
what I'm talking about.
And he's like, "Yeah, B is haunted." He's like, one of the old barrel guys. I mean, he looked like the huge linebacker. I mean, 300 pounds. I mean, you wouldn't think he'd be scared to go into the rick house at night, but that man wasn't going in there because they've had ricks, barrels fly off the ricks. Someone throws rocks at them too, sometimes too. But I think it was just a cry for attention though, because we started kind of diving into it a little bit more and kind of figured out its story, and that's all I wanted at that point. It just wanted its story to be known. It just wanted to get out, and so it started following me at home, and I'd tell it, "You can't come here. You have to stay at the distillery. Like you can't come home with me." And it's seceded off a little bit, but God, it was great hearing some of those good old boys like talk about it though. Like if you
Right.
get a good redneck talking about it and like they get on a roll about it, man, it's great. So I got one of the other barrel guys. He's fearless. He ain't scared of anything. So I was like, "All right, let's go down there." I was like, "Something wants us to go down there." So whip out the cell phone because cell phone can pick up some things that we can't see. So I'm videoing it, and God, there's this orb in front of us, and it's leading us behind the rick house. So we're going back there, and then all of a sudden, there's like a dozen plus just come swirling in and out through there. So it was powerful, and he was freaking out. He's like, "Do you see this?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm glad you're here with me because no one's going to believe this." And so we went into another rick house. That's when stuff started getting weird. I could hear footsteps on the second floor. You could hear things popping and thumping in there, and we definitely saw something in there. I definitely think that there's a few different elements going on there. I believe that there might have been a younger slave or African American child or something in that lines of that. I think that there was definitely some Indian presence in another rick house because I walked behind there and I saw then this was the middle of the day. I saw the back door open, and then all of a sudden I got violently sick at my stomach and I could smell smoke, like some like meat cooking. And I was like, oh, this is where they were camping and cooking stuff at. And
Mhm.
I'm not going to that one. Like that's where I crossed the line on that one. But
Right.
the Native American stuff is they don't want you in there, you don't go there. Like, and
Hmm.
I'm never going in that rook house. But the other one's just a little mischievous guy, and then the other one's just it's a child of some sort. Like, and we know that, and it communicates with us as well too. Like we'll go in and see. There used to be like some letters in the visitor center, and all the time the tea would come down, and my coworker was like, she finally was able to break through and got a name, and his name is Tetabo. And I was like, oh, okay, so it makes
Yep.
sense
Makes
now
sense.
because there's rumors that there used to be a hanging tree down by the pond as well too. And actually, where the barrel pick room is where slave quarters would have been. So there's a lot of interesting history there that just kind of showed itself too. And all this stuff is something that I don't really seek out. It just all of a sudden just pops into your life, and it's more intuitive, if you will,
Hmm.
instead of like me like reading 20 million books trying to acquire a new skill, if you will.
Right.
And it's just when it turns on, it's on.
Well, and you're absolutely right. So more often than not, those sort of things, they want attention, and if they were particularly a lot of times, at least in my opinion, and the experiences that I've had, especially in the distilling industry, if it's something that's ever been human, it wants attention and it wants its story told, right? Now, whether or not that story gets told like on a bottle or it just gets told on tours or it gets told to friends, whatever, it wants its story told, right? And for me, once I stumble into one, even if it's one that I don't mean to stumble into, I stumble into quite by accident, or at least on my end, it's by accident. Maybe one of their buddies told them about me, whatever. It won't leave me alone until I get that story told. I almost have to get it out of my system, or it becomes those things can become a negative drag over time on me because I can't let go of them is my problem. But it's interesting you mentioned the Native American history there too at Wilderness Trail. So when I was there, that's one thing I'll say. So there's a to me there's a feeling, and it starts on the road leading up to the distillery for me. But there's a little bit of a feeling there that is not dissimilar to the same feeling that I get when I go to, say, for example, Angel Mounds or even Beck's Mill, Indiana, where there's a couple little small mounds in that area. There's a lingering aspect in the atmosphere. And it's interesting too. You mentioned the Native American thing as well. So you just had a cave adventure, right? And that you saw the quartz light up, like it was kind of feeding off your energy and feeding its energy back to you as well. But that was one of the things that a lot of the tribes kind of in the Midwest and Kentucky and Indiana and Tennessee down into Georgia. I can't remember the proper name of what they call it now, but they used to call it the Southern Death Complex is what they used to call it. But one of the rituals was they would find a cave, and when you became a quote unquote man, you would go into this cave, and the more narrow the cave got, the better. And the idea was that you would crawl through this cave, and if there was an out and exit that you could get to, especially if you had to go through a very tight area, when you emerged, that's when they knew you were a man. And you'll often find there's a cave here not too far outside of Pekin that still has one of the petroglyphs on it, and it's a hand with an eye in the middle of it, is what it is. So, you had a little adventure there that definitely showed you some sort of nature spirit or some sort of ancestral spirit, and brought you some gifts and showed you a little peek through the veil. So
Oh, that as soon as we walked out of there, I was talking to my friend. I was like, "Do you realize what we just did? That was a rite of passage cavern that we were in
mhm.
because it starts out at the bottom and then there's an exit at the top."
Yep. Yep.
So we actually that was the second night because we went down there one night and I lost an item, couldn't find it anywhere, and then we had to go because we didn't make it out through the top. So we had to go back that second day, and that's when all
Trace
this
it.
happened. And then, of course, that item showed up in my car, and it wasn't in the trunk before. I know that for a fact.
It is so crazy how those sort of things happen, man. And I have struggled and struggled and struggled to wrap my mind around those things because I've had it happen so many times. And you just start to think like, even just the whatever you want to call it, the quantum mechanics of how something like that would work. But it's you always know, right? Because you had that thing with you when you went. You had it with you when you went, right? But it somehow got back in your car. So, and there's no explanation that we know of in the universe as of yet to explain that. But I don't want it explained. I hope it never gets explained, dude. I hope it just stays the way it is.
Well, brother, you want to go down the rabbit hole? You can drink a cup of ayahuasca and have a spiritual death and go to the underworld and be reborn.
Oh yeah,
I thought I knew what I was doing when I went to Peru, but there ain't no reading books and watching documentaries and talking to people about that one.
Mm-hmm.
That is a whole new medicine there that some people actually don't come back from it. Some people actually die during the experience, like literally, not spiritually and
right.
rebirth. But God, Mother Ayahuasca tormented me when I was there. I mean, there's a room of us. It's funny, like, I tell this joke. It was a master distiller, a monk, and a lesbian walk into the jungle. All of them died, and none of them came back.
right. That's awesome.
It's the first night I'm sitting on the mat, and like we're coming back to reality, or this plane of reality, and I look over, and like this lady was like, "How was it?" And I was like, "I died," and she was like, "I died too." And she's like, she packed up and got out of there. And I was just like trying to talk to her. I was just like, just stay. I was like, you're never going to have this experience again. Like, don't drink again. Just read a book and chill in the jungle. I mean, like, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. And then on the opposite side of the room, like my little monk friend, he's over there having a great time, just giggling and having fun while I'm getting tortured and feeling my fingernails fall out of my hands, and then putting my body next to a tree and my body rotting and hair falling out and decomposing, and then being reborn and levitating through the jungle and then going through the Amazon River into Atlantis. So
taught you some lessons for sure.
It definitely taught me a lot of life lessons. I convinced myself I needed to get a PhD in plant medicine, essentially, and decided to not do that because it was a school in San Francisco, and I'm pretty woo-woo, if you will. I don't like that term, but that's a pretty widespread one. They lost me. I was like, what in the hell in the San Francisco hills are these fucking people about right now?
Yep.
And they're talking about aliens in the fourth and fifth dimension, and I was cool with that. What really lost me was they did a hour-long ram's horn, like, what is that? The Jewish ram's horn thing. Anyways, played it for an hour, and I was like, oh, all right, I'm out. They lost me.
Done.
I'm out. So.
Right. I can see this kind of shit in the right places in Kentucky or Indiana as it is, and it's a whole nother show. Yeah, man. Yeah, I feel you on that stuff because I'm in a peculiar situation as far as like my I guess the way I grew up, growing up in the middle of nowhere and definitely leaning into the hillbilly aspect a little bit, and then also the more enlightened sort of thing. So I'm fairly woo when it comes to my belief systems and my ideals. I wouldn't even say belief systems, just ideals really is more my thing. Yeah, so there are people that will lose you, right? I've had that thought in my head, like, what happens the first time that somebody reaches out to you to come on? If you have ghosts, you have everything, and you listen to their story, and you know that they're full of shit. Like, how do I have no grand statement overall to be like, I don't know how to deal with that, So, and luckily it hasn't happened so far, thankfully.
I mean, I don't aspire to do that. I'm my true, authentic self, 100%.
Absolutely.
I speak my mind and speak my truth because that is what I'm here on this earth to do, and cannot get away from that. If you don't speak your truth, I mean, my truth is my reality. Mm-hmm. So I be my authentic, weird self as much as possible, and people embrace me for it. They love it. I mean, people like a character. They don't want some they don't want a corporate cookie cutter person and just, just a robot, if you will, like just live on this earth to live in the suburbs, to buy a Tesla and take kids to soccer and then die with a couple million in the bank. Like that's not what I value. What's in my heart, not my bank account personally. I mean, trust me, I like money too, but at the end of the day, though, I value what's in my heart.
That's what's great great about being part of this industry too, is that, for like the job that you've had, the career that you've had, and the career that I've had, you have to be a character. If you're not a character, nobody cares, right? They're not going to pay attention to somebody that's not a character. They just won't. You have to lean hard into all the things that make you what you are, and you've done a great job of that. Absolutely, 100%. And I think that's something else that you and I have in common, is because we are both characters and we're both into this kind of thing. It makes us more susceptible to seeing and being a part of those things that come along and want to, seek our attention and put their energy out there. If you would, on the ayahuasca thing, talk a little bit about what that was like. Just like, so here's my thing. Like, I know that I don't need to do it. I probably should at some point, not right now, because I know that I've done enough spiritual work with mushrooms in particular in the past that I know what my reaction to that is, right? And then the idea of going to the jungle to do it also just scares the piss out of me. So what was that? I mean, what was that like when you went in? Did you ever have a moment of hesitancy? Was there ever a moment where you're like, I don't think I'm going to do this?
I went by myself. Like,
right.
I went to a third world country, Peru, in the middle of COVID, solo traveling. But what was so interesting, though, is I knew it was what I was supposed to do, because I'm solo traveling. I'm sitting in the Lexington airport, actually, and I'm sitting next to this girl, and she's like, we're talking, and she's like, where are you going? And I'm like, Peru. And she's like, I'm going to Peru as well, too. So first friend I met there. So we traveled, got through customs together, and I'm sitting in Lima airport, and these people walk up to me, and they're like, are you going to Arcana? And I was like, yeah, how'd you know? And they're like, we're going too. So I just kept picking up pieces of the puzzle every time I went there, and then I had a great time. I mean, I did things that people would have thought I was stupid for doing. Like, I met a tuk-tuk driver, and I was like, all right, here's $200. Take care of me. Translate. I want to go to the shaman shop. I want to go to the market. I want to eat grub worms. I need some coca leaves to chew on. And he's like, we spent the day. Like, I had the best day ever. Like, when I got there, got to do all those things. And he's like, do you want to come back to my house and meet my family and my monkey and sloth and stuff? And I was like, yeah, let's do it. So I went back to his house and met the whole family. And honestly, I mean, I'm still connected with them as well too. So there was some political uprising in Peru. Basically, it almost broke out into civil war there for a second, but the government was able to put everything down. But during that time, his income's based off tourism, and if they're kidnapping Americans, that's not good for business. So I actually got a nice Christmas bonus, and I was like, this guy is struggling to feed his family and kids. So I sent him, me and some friends sent him $1,000 and to get medicine and food and have Christmas for their kids. So
that's great.
And I always have a home in the jungle and Aikidos anytime I want it from them, and we still talk on, Facebook and stuff like that, keep in touch, but it was good. But so that's just getting to Aikidos, which is the port city. Then you're on a wooden boat, like a huge, like John boat with like a little roof on top of it, going up the Amazon River for 3 hours in the middle. I mean, a remote place. I mean, there ain't no getting out of there unless by boat or someone's picking you up in a helicopter deal. And it's in the middle of the jungle. There's a tiny little village right next to it, and the whole compound is like straw malocas and things like that. And So just being there, but you have to prepare yourself for that trip because you do a purification process. So similar to this dives into the spirituality of alchemy already. So like you have to quit drinking. You can't can't consume tobacco. Can't eat pork. You can't have sex or masturbate for a period. So you're purifying your body, and basically you're not eating salt, you're not eating sugar. So like I spent the like 2 weeks, I was eating like cold rice and bland chicken and just raw vegetables and stuff, getting prepared to go there. And there is no prepping for that one. I mean,
Right.
it was the most rewarding thing that I've ever done for myself in this life, though, and it really helped rewrite and define my constitution and my role as a human on this earth. Because just having those experiences and like you just have a new grasp for appreciation for life. So you might have heard people with near death experiences, they come back with that mindset, and that's exactly what happened. I mean, ego death 4 nights in a row. I mean, people are like, why would you want to do that? And like, there's people leaving, and I'm like, God, even one like the last night, I was like, I'm not doing this again. Like, it's not fun, and
Hmm.
like dying hurts. It's like it's hard to conceptualize it and talk about it with people because if you don't live it and breathe it and experience it, you can't understand it, and you can't read a book on it. You have to like live and go through the experience, though. But and then there's integration work as well too. I mean, because you're just not having a psychedelic experience; you're working through problems, like, and you set an intention for while you're there, like what you want to do, and kind of work on yourself. I mean, there's people in the room that have PTSD. I mean, there's people addicted to heroin. There was a guy that was in the room that he was a huge alcoholic, and he thought that he fell off a roof at a bar. And when he was on ayahuasca, he realized that he actually jumped off and tried to kill himself. And so you're unpacking some
Yeah.
intense shadow work right there. It's, I mean, they kind of joke and say like ayahuasca is like 20 years of therapy in 8 hours.
In one go.
And
Yes.
so, but the whole spirit of ayahuasca though is very interesting though. So there's two different plants. So there is the ayahuasca vine that has the DMT in it, and then there is also another leaf that they use in the brew so that your body can ingest it. It's some kind of enzyme. I can't
It's
remember
enzyme.
exactly what
Yeah.
it is. So it's like an MAHI inhibitor or something like
Mhm.
that. So it allows you to consume the spirit. And the way that ayahuasca came around was the spirits of the jungle came out to the shamans, let's just say a millennial ago, because no one actually knows, and told them how to make this medicine. So the people in the village, they drink it once a year. That's like a little reset spiritually. I mean, the children drink it as well too. I mean, it's not a drug. It's plant medicine, and
Yeah.
it's a sacred medicine, and it is has a exact spirit as well too. Because I I actually was given a gift from Mother Ayahuasca in the jungle as well too. So after she tortured me for several days, I had I brought pie stones down there, and because I had a bunch of pie stones at home, and I had a dream that I gave the shaman a pie stone. So I brought all the shamans pie stone necklaces, and the head shaman did a special song for me. It's called Icarus. So it's a song, it's like a spiritual song as well too. So she brought me up there, and when she set me down in front of her, and she's singing this song, blowing tobacco on me, and then all of a sudden I could see the spirit behind her, and it was working through her. And when she blew that tobacco into me, Mother Ayahuasca put the light in my heart. And that was one of the most powerful experiences I've ever had in this life. And it made me appreciate what I have.
Yeah.
Like we were talking about, like it's easy to get weighed down and society standards. And what I really learned from that experience is we're sick, humanity's sick, and it's because of disconnection and misinformation. We are disconnected from our true nature and origin. We're disconnected from Gaia, the planet, and Earth, and we're not living the way that we should be. And it's hard to do. I mean, we live in a capitalist consumer society that pushes poison on you. I mean, you drive down the road. I mean, I'm talking about McDonald's, just everything.
Yeah, everything.
It's just overstimulation, and it's people don't live a balanced life. Like they don't. I have 4 different mindsets on that, or 4 thoughts on that. So there's heart set, health set, soul set. So, and keeping those in line is very difficult because disconnection. I mean, I don't think we were ever supposed to sit in an office for 9 hours a day, or like we're not out in the sun working. Our feet aren't in the grass, making that energetic connection with the earth, and that's what's eroding society there. And we're slowly killing the planet as well too. I mean, there's no argument about that. So, I mean, when I was coming out of the jungle, it was like the facilitator was like, "What are you going to do, Macaulay?" I was like, I'm gonna go join the Peace Corps, or like go get a
Right.
PhD. I was like, I gotta save the planet, like. So, and I'm doing that though, and I think having these conversations and setting a discourse and this discussion is what that is powerful medicine, honestly. And
It is.
I think that's how we're able to heal and start working back into a right direction, because it's not too late.
No.
But we're on the brink of it, though.
And I agree with you on all those things, and even in the whiskey industry, you never know like who you're going to talk to and say these things to, and it's going to inspire them. And even with the disconnect thing, that's a very big part of the some of the issues that I have in general with the distilling industry, and we don't have to go into all that, but oak is obviously an issue that I'm pretty passionate about, that people hear me talk about on Distillers Talk all the time, and how scarce that's going to eventually get, for one thing. But the bigger part of it is we're so disconnected now. Like, I mean, there was a disconnect 100 years ago, but people still knew how to garden. They knew how to garden sustainably and farm sustainably to whatever degree that they could. And they knew how to take things through entire cycles, right? So it wasn't just enough to grow a garden. You had to be able to save your seeds, right? And the seeds were your life. How many people now, know how to really garden to begin with? And I'm talking garden. Don't go to the hardware store and buy your plants. Don't go to the hardware store and buy your fertilizer, etc. But really garden. And if they do know that, do they know how to properly take care of the plants and keep seed strains going, etc.? It's a huge, huge disconnect in general, from all those things that really made us what we would consider human. Absolutely. And I have a hard time with it even as a distiller, Macaulay. Like, I work in a building that for whatever unknown reason, and I hope they hear this, I've told them before, they decided to paint some industrial gray institutionalized color, right? And so for me, having grown up on a farm and grown up as a moonshiner, there's something just like slightly off about distillation, because I'm in a building and I'm stuck in a building, as opposed to having sunlight and being outside in the sunlight and that being part of the entire process. And so there's disconnects there for sure. Absolutely. I agree with you, man. People have to have those things, and they have to find the things that bring them back to what their true nature and their true reality is, right? And those things often, whether it's ayahuasca or if it's some other spiritual journey, whether or not it's with psychedelics or if it's just with some trial and tribulation, they're not easy and they're not necessarily fun, but they are necessary and you get rewarded for it.
That's why I practice Zen now. I mean, I went to a workshop here at the local college, and I'm in there having these mind expanding experiences, and like they probably thought I was a little crazy because I brought in all these crystals. I
did the whole thing
very eclectically dressed, and like we're talking, and I was like, my mind is blown open, and I didn't even have to go to the jungle and sit in ceremony for this, and because there is no just picking up. You have to contemplate. You have to work on things. There is no just watch a movie or just get sprinkled and you're in the tradition and understand it. Like you have to work on it. There's no skipping to the end or cheating on the test. Like it is what it is. You're exploring yourself and being having to sit and in silence and meditate on these parables and these koans, and it just makes you kind of transforms your thinking process and appreciation of life and what your role is in society as a person, as a businessman, a husband, a friend, anything like that, and being able to establish yourself and having ideals as well too, because we can, for example, there's a lot of pitfalls of distillation industry. Let's talk about farming for a second. So are we buying organic corn, or are we buying Monsanto corn that has Roundup sprayed all over it? That's terrible for the environment, terrible for the farmer, or what are we engaging in on that? Are we importing glass from China, a deprived workers manufacturing? So there's a lot of things in there behind the scenes, and you have to be able to stand up for what you believe in and have integrity and compassion with it as well too, and not be complacent and stay silent about it.
Yep. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. So I wanted to also ask you, because I know you're also interested in alchemy as well, and was going to kind of touch base with you on that and see if you had anything there that you wanted to contribute, because that's the birth of distillation is alchemy, and every distillation is alchemical. But
so let me segue into this real quick. So I'm starting a new project called Dark Arts Whiskey House. We're full transparency. We buy and source some of the best whiskey in the world, and we blend and finish it. And it's custom tailored to what you like. It's not someone telling you what to drink or this is what's available. So we're trying to shatter that glass ceiling that's rooted in such like standardization and history and tradition. So, and when we're putting this package together, everything that we're doing is kind of the sacred arts, honestly. I view distillation, blending, spirits manufacturing is it's sacred art, honestly. And we're sending all these marketing segment pieces out, and we're hearing just everything from people. And like this guy chimed back, and he's like, yeah, alchemy's stupid. He's like, they weren't even able to make gold. And I was like, oh, okay. First of all,
yep, one of those, huh?
Yeah, one of those. I was like, first of all, is the gold a metaphor or what? Because we're talking about spiritual and physical transformation on that. Second of all, do you know what chemistry is? And do you drink spirits? There's a lot of things that came out of alchemy. So, but in modern distillation, the principles of alchemy are used to transform raw materials into refined products. So the process involves separating and purifying a mixture of substances to obtain a substance of higher purity and concentration. This is achieved through a series and chemical process that involve heating, cooling, and condensing. And the goal is to extract the essence of the substance and remove the impurities. Similarly, spiritual transformation involves the purification and refinement of the self. And the principles of alchemy can be applied to this using that symbolism and imagery to describe the various stages of transformation. The alchemical process involves a series of stages, including dissolution, separation, purification, and union. And these stages are also reflected in the spiritual transformation process, which involves letting go of old patterns and beliefs and separating from negative influences, purifying the mind, body, and uniting with a higher consciousness. The alchemical process also involves the use of various symbols and archetypes as well too, such as the philosopher's stone or the seven metals. And these symbols represent different aspects of the transformation project, such as the transmutation of the base metals into gold and the attainment of spiritual enlightenment. So in modern distillation, there's similar symbols are used to represent the various stages of the process, such as distillation, like the equipment, the flask, and the condenser. And overall, the principles of ancient alchemy can be applied to modern distillation and spiritual transformation to achieve greater purity and refinement, whether it's refining raw materials or refining yourself. The alchemical process offers the powerful framework for transformation and growth. And even though some of the major archetypes of alchemy aren't directly related, but they can be applied to the process as a metaphorical representation of the stages of spiritual transformation. Like distillation is a process of separating and purifying substances that use heat and condensing. In alchemy, distillation is used as a metaphor for the process of purifying the self and separating the elements from the essential and the non-essential. And some of the archetypes of alchemy that can be used to describe the different stages of distillation process are like the philosopher's stone. I mean, that represents the ultimate goal of the alchemical process, which is the attainment of spiritual enlightenment. The three essentials represent the three fundamental principles of alchemy that are purified and separated during distillation. And then the four elements, it represents the different stages of distillation, with the earth representing the initial substance, air representing the heating process, fire representing the purification of the essential, and water representing the condensation of the purified substance. And then the seven metals can represent the levels of spiritual attainment that can be achieved through the process of distillation. And even the zodiac as well too. I mean, they represent different aspects of the self that are purified and transformed during the process. The tree of life, which we actually use in the logo at Wilderness Trail, I mean, it represents the interconnectedness of all things and the process of spiritual evolution that occurs during the distillation process. And then getting into the sun and the moon, I mean, that can represent the masculine and feminine aspects of the self that are integrated and balanced during the process as well too.
Absolutely sacred and profane. That's
yes.
Yep, 100%. So I am super excited for your new project, man. I think it's awesome. I think you're the perfect kind of person to be doing that. I don't think you're the perfect kind of person. You are the perfect person to be doing that and shepherding that kind of project. I'm super excited to see you have something that is yours, that you're going to be able to do cool stuff with that nobody else is doing, and you're going to have intention behind it and understanding and love going into it, right? There's going to be, just because of that alcohol being in your presence and you actually working on it, it's going to pick up those things from you. And that's fucking cool. Whether anybody else catches on to that or not, that's cool to me. I love that. So talking just a little bit more on your new project. So you going to do this as like an experience sort of thing? Or are you going to be doing any distilling as well? Because I know you did some distilling at Wilderness Trail, and I'm hoping that you're going to be doing some distilling here. And I hope that you're doing some weird distilling is what I'm hoping for, brother.
Oh, well, you know everything. We got to keep it weird anyways. So, yeah. And so in order to be able to set up what we were going to do, we had to, our partners and us, we had to apply for a distilled spirits permit because we're wanting to be able to sell alcohol out of the visitor center and try to capture as much of that money back instead of me selling a bottle for. So wait, you know this how this game works. So $100 bottle, okay. $20 goes to the store owner, $30 goes to the distributor, $50 goes to me. I have to pay for all my taxes on that, so it's another, let's say $11 for a 6-pack case, and then bottle costs and facility insurance. I got to eat too, so I have to get a salary out of it. So these craft spirits get expensive. And when you're doing something small, I mean, I don't have a stock exchange program or anything like that. It's me and my partner that are putting everything on the line right now to try to get this operating. So we're sitting around with a lawyer, and we're at the table, and we're like, well, who? I was like, who knows how to distill in here? And they're like, oh, you. And I was just like, oh, well, this wasn't on my to-do list or vision board, so I need to like digest this for a minute. Like we're just supposed to be able to blend some stuff and sell it out the gift shop. Now I'm gonna have to start distilling. So we've actually our partner that we're secured a 100-gallon pot still. So looking forward to getting that. We just put in the serial number A1859420. So
Nice. That's awesome.
Looking excited to get that, and I was thinking, like, what am I going to run through this still? Because I want to try to keep it as simple as possible. So I'm not sure if we're going to be doing any like whiskey, for example, because mash tuns, ferment, or all that. So I started really thinking, like, what's the best thing that I could do that represents me and be able to put something in the market. So I'm in the planning stages of a vodka and an absinthe right now. So I'm falling down the rabbit hole on plant magic and spirits and plants right now, because I want to make something that has intent and intention behind it, and use it as a powerful elixir, honestly, and hopefully that people understand the alchemy behind that and embrace that as well too, because I'm really excited about getting into the gin, and I mean the absinthe as well too. So I know I'm going to be relying on you to help set me straight and say, like, oh, that's not a good idea. Like, let's not do that. But still working on a name for that. But I had a dream the other night, and I was like, oh, we're going to call this brand Dreamweaver Spirits. So that's
Nice.
going to be a subset. So we've got Dark Arts Whiskey House, and then we're going to have Dreamweaver Spirits as well too, doing the absinthe and the gin right now. And who knows? I mean, we could keep evolving this as well too. I mean, you have me on here next year, I'm be like, well, I started fermenting hemp seeds and pawpaw fruit and everything I could find.
Well, we're gonna have to kick you a couple of empty whiskey barrels in there and knock the heads out of them, and you're gonna have to do some fermentation for sure, and throw it in that still at some point. It won't make much, but it'll make me pretty special. So, dude, it's gonna be cool. The absinthe, the thing that you'll love about absinthe is people who really like absinthe, and I mean people who are really into it, they'll get every bit of that intention. They'll get every bit of that understanding. And that's why it's my favorite spirit. It's my favorite spirit to drink, my favorite spirit to make, because the people that are into it, they get it. They understand. They're on that wavelength.
Yeah, and I'm sure that it's been done out there before. Someone else is currently doing it, but I was kind of re-engineering and like reverse engineering what I was wanting to do. So I'm thinking like I'm thinking bottle label, and I'm obsessed, and I will not budge on this. I'm gonna use purple pea flower as a coloring. So I want to do a purple absinthe and a purple gin.
Yep, that's awesome. Yeah, I do a purple absinthe. I've done a couple of them. I did one for Key West Trading. And then I've got one that's coming up for another project in the future, but I actually use maize morado, Kasuli corn to color it with. And then you get some of that starchiness from the corn, which is cool. But I'd love that amethyst color in the first place, being a Pisces. So, it's right up my alley. But yeah, dude, I love absinthe, and I want to see what you do with it, because it'd be in the right hands, and that intent will be there. And I know that you'll also put your spin on it. It doesn't have to be Val de Travers absinthe. It doesn't have to be Paris absinthe. It just has to be your absinthe.
Well, and kind of going back into full circle on it, I've just ordered and sourced a bunch of heirloom seeds of wormwood, mugwort, just all the essentials out, and I'm going to start getting those propagated right now. So I want this to be special instead of just buying stuff on there, because I mean, ultimately, like my family owns a farm in Western Kentucky, and my grandfather built that business from scratch. And I would love to pull all this together and have a North Star goal of heirloom variety grains grown on my family's farm and me distill it. I think my grandfather would be super proud to hear me say that as a North Star goal. and I'm gonna make it happen.
Yeah, well, and talk about going back to, you know, finding those connections, not only just family and ancestral, but also tying back into earth, right? Being able to grow your own things and actually capture their essence and their spirits and purify it and put it out there in a way that people can. There's something just super magic about, and apple brandy's easy one to go to because apples are seasonal, right? But there's something special about having something that presents itself as in a particular time and place and part of the year and grows on sacred land, ancestral land, right? And to be able to take that out of season in January and open it and smell it and taste it, and it take you exactly back to where you were when that stuff was ripe in the field, grown from the source. That's magic. That's real magic right there. So I'm excited.
Exactly, and I want to embody that, and I want that to be full disclosure. I want people to understand the intent and intention behind everything that's done in that process.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, and I like I said, I can't wait to see it for sure. And when you get down the road on that a little bit too, I'm gonna have you on Distillers Talk with Christy as well. And you know I'll be down there bothering you at some point. So absolutely.
Yeah, you need to bring some more for that barrel aged absinthe. I've got about a finger's left in that bottle right there.
Yeah.
Sipping on some right now. So
got 2 barrels I'm getting ready to bottle here shortly. It's the same thing, except I did just a little slight Amburana finish on it. So Yep. So that'll be fun. You know, I try to be careful with Amburana because it goes funky real quick in my opinion. But I think I got just enough cinnamon toast crunch in there that I'll be all right.
Perfect.
So
yeah, can't wait to share that with you.
Hell yeah, man. But anything else you want to touch on, or?
I did forget one thing. So
yeah.
I was at after going through the cave process and all that, we went to a big Bourbon Crusaders charity auction. I mean, Barrel Willett selling for almost $300,000-$400,000 there. I mean, very high end. All the master distillers like Chris Morris, all those guys are like sitting at their table. Drew from Willett, and I've been drinking a little bit, and I had the urge to go make a speech. So I went up to the organizer and I was like, "Hey, brother," I was like, "I want to go make a speech real quick." And he's like, "Okay." He's like, "Whatever you want to do, Macaulay, you do whatever you need to do." I was like, "All right." So I got up there and I started giving a speech, and I started talking about alchemy, and I was like, there's a reason that these Baptist preachers, Elijah Craig, and people started distilling spirits, and that was for the prosperity of our people. I was like, what we don't realize is we always talk about limestone water and the power of limestone water in there, but what you don't understand is that water is filtered through quartz crystals and is energetically charged, and it has transformation properties to it that impact on a spiritual level, because it is for building a better connection with the community, the economy, and the divine as well too. And I was wearing a fur coat as well too, so I was a little eclectic that day.
That's awesome.
But oh my God, you should have seen some of their faces in
I
there.
can
They're
imagine.
just like, what the hell
yeah.
is this guy talking about right now? Because they're, some of those guys are just like, "Yep, I work in a liquor factory and I run corn."
Right. Somebody was over there pulling out their little black book that says like Kentucky Bourbon Hall of Fame, had your name in it. They put an X next to it. not this one. That's
not amazing. Today.
Yeah. Well, it's like that absinthe you just mentioned. We filtered that through amethyst, and that had intention on my end. 100%. I've talked about it on podcasts before, but I had to be able to sell it to people that didn't understand that intention, right? So, but I had an easy out, and the easy out was, well, shit, Dan Aykroyd filters his vodka through Herkimer Diamonds, so why wouldn't I do it through amethyst? And that was the easy out when you got in that conversation of where people won't have that understanding or that listening. So then it becomes a tongue-in-cheek joke, which in and of itself, being the holy jester is also an important position. So
Yeah,
But
maybe I'll filter some stuff through some Moldavite and get people real fired up.
there you go. There you go, dude. That's awesome, man. So, where will people be able to find out more about your new project?
You can follow me on my Instagram page. That's the Bourbon Swami. That's probably the best part right now. We're still kind of getting things together and waiting for a launch in the fall. So just got to make sure all the paperwork's done. We're getting the branding done this week. So I've hired a really nice firm for that and starting to get some barrels blended, and then when the time is ready, aka when we have the licensing and I have a fallback plan or contingency plan to make any shifts in profession and career, that it's ready to go on day one. So
Right.
we'll have a big launch party for that, and I definitely want to get you down and us do a little collaboration blend to
Absolutely.
release as well too. So and then yeah, we'll be in Lexington, right around the corner from the distillery district, and looking forward to it. It's gonna be special. I think people are. I think they'll understand it because we're trying to make it the ultimate drinkers experience and not just be cheesy corporate lines like that. Like I want to push the lines of blending and making unique products because the way it's set up is, I mean, we've got base spirit of rye whiskey and bourbon. We have some 7-year-old, 10-year-old variety, and then we also have some stuff aging as well too. So we got some new makes and 3-year-old. So we've got a pipeline of some significant product coming in, and I've also been importing a bunch of badass barrels. So I've got 10 Armagnac barrels coming. I've got white port, red port, sherry, Amburana wood, Mezzanara, 4 different varietals of French oak, some specific toasting profiles of some American oak. I just filled up some Madeira barrels the other day, and then I'm a sucker for some maple syrup rye whiskey, honestly. So I filled up a bunch of rye whiskey and maple syrup barrels as well too.
Went
But
all in. Hell
the
yeah.
thought is you can come in and you'll be able to, on a small scale, you can make your own blend. So I think Amburana, Armagnac, and maple syrup finish something concoction just sounds amazing to me. And you don't see that out in the market because no one wants to deal with it because it's a lot of work. I mean,
Yeah.
I had my mama in there helping me flip barrels over on Memorial Day, and she's filling up barrels. I'm over there hammering it, bungs out, sustaining a little head injury from a rogue bung flying out.
Right.
And it was a lot. There's a lot behind the scenes. Like, even it's not just, well, I mean, some people just buy and dump stuff and source it, but there's some magic in this for sure. And it goes back into the whole conversation we just had. It's really just setting that intention and putting out something next level. I mean,
Yeah, man.
I think that we're kind of shattering a glass ceiling at this point. I mean, we're not reinventing the wheel. We're just making new opportunities in something that's rooted in tradition and history, and it's hard to get outside the box. And being in the single barrel game for years, I was always such a snob. Like I was like, single barrel or bust, like that's all I'm doing. And then I started blending stuff together, a couple barrels, and I was like, oh damn! I was like,
It gets more interesting real quick.
I was like, that barrel, like these single barrels are good. I mean, this one's magic, but I was like, this 3-barrel blend that I put together is next level. So, and we'll be able to do that on small scale. So individuals will be able to come in, just have a tasting experience, or if they want to blend up the bottle. And if you want to scale it up, I mean, we can walk out with 2 or 2,000.
Yeah, man. Curated custom blends with somebody that actually knows what they're doing. That's awesome, dude. People are gonna go crazy over this. I guarantee it. It's gonna be a big deal, brother. It's gonna be a real big deal. So, hell yeah, man. I'm super excited. But well, all right, man. I guess we'll wrap this one up. And I appreciate you coming on, dude. And it's been a great time. It's always a good time. I want to have you back on in the future because I know you're going to have more experiences and you probably have other experiences to share as well anyways. But I think that there's a long fruitful friendship here, obviously, that we talk back and forth quite a bit, and I'm sure that we'll have you back here pretty regularly. Maybe we'll do a once a season check-in, man. You never know.
Hey, I'm in for it.
Hell yeah, dude.
I appreciate your wisdom and insight and perspective on everything, and I think it's good that we're able to have a way to express this and put this out there, because it's not the mainstream consensus on everything, but it makes you think differently after hearing something like this, and you start questioning or just reevaluating what you believe in.
Yeah. You never know when somebody's I've had it happen to me a million times, driving down the road just listening to the podcast and something clicks. Oh, I never made that connection before. So there's something real special about that for sure, brother. But all right, man. Well, I'm gonna